The night my daughter-in-law said those words, the house felt smaller than it ever had before. The dining table was set neatly, plates still warm from dinner, and the air smelled of spices and routine. I had been sitting there quietly, still learning how to breathe without my husband, when she leaned back in her chair and spoke as if she were commenting on the weather. My son didn't argue. He didn't even look uncomfortable. He simply smiled and nodded, his silence louder than her cruelty. In that moment, grief turned into something sharper. I excused myself without a scene, went to the bedroom that no longer felt like mine, and packed a single suitcase. Each item I folded reminded me of a different season of my life. Raising my son, building a home brick by brick, loving a man who had promised me forever. I walked out before dawn, leaving behind the walls that had witnessed my sacrifices. I didn't cry on the street. I didn't look back. I told myself that dignity was the last thing they couldn't take from me. I spent the night at a small, unfamiliar hotel, staring at the ceiling as memories played like an old film. By morning, my sadness had hardened into clarity. I remembered my husband's careful planning, the way he used to say, "Life rewards those who prepare quietly." After breakfast, I went straight to the bank. The teller greeted me by name, which already felt like a small victory. When I requested access to accounts my husband had insisted remain solely under my name, her eyebrows lifted slightly. Papers were signed, confirmations printed, and balances revealed that told a very different story than the one my daughter-in-law believed. There were savings, investments, and documents carefully organized over decades. Walking out of the bank, sunlight hit my face, and for the first time since the funeral, I felt something close to hope. I wasn't homeless. I wasn't helpless. I was simply underestimated. Over the next few days, I rented a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't grand, but it was mine. I furnished it slowly, choosing pieces that made me feel grounded rather than impressive. Word eventually reached my son that I had disappeared. He called once, his voice uncertain, as if he were unsure whether he was allowed to care. I kept the conversation short, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. I began revisiting old skills I had set aside while raising a family: bookkeeping, organizing, advising. Friends of friends needed help, and soon small opportunities turned into steady work. Each paycheck wasn't just money. It was proof that my life had value beyond being someone's wife or mother. One afternoon, I met with a lawyer recommended by an old colleague. Together, we reviewed documents my husband had prepared years ago. Deeds, trusts, and clauses written with foresight unfolded before us. The house my daughter-in-law claimed was never mine had conditions attached that none of them had bothered to understand. My lawyer smiled knowingly and said everything was legally solid. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt calm. Justice didn't need anger. It needed patience. I instructed him to proceed carefully, without confrontation. I wanted truth to arrive quietly, the way consequences usually do. When the legal notices finally arrived at my son's house, panic replaced confidence. He called again, this time repeatedly. I answered on the third attempt. His voice cracked as he asked why I hadn't told him. I told him that respect goes both ways, and silence had been my answer to his smile at that dinner table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply stated facts. The house could not be sold, mortgaged, or claimed without my consent. The shock on the other end of the line was almost audible. For the first time, he listened. My daughter-in-law tried a different approach. She showed up at my apartment with apologies that sounded rehearsed. She spoke about family, about misunderstandings, about starting over. I offered her tea and listened without interruption. When she finished, I thanked her for coming and told her I wished her well. Forgiveness, I explained, didn't mean access. Boundaries were not punishments. They were protections. She left quietly, realizing too late that kindness does not equal weakness. Months passed, and my life found a rhythm I had never known. I traveled, read books I'd postponed for years, and laughed without guilt. My son eventually visited alone. This time there were no excuses, just honesty. He admitted his failure, his fear of conflict, his regret. I didn't absolve him instantly, but I allowed space for rebuilding something new, something honest. Relationships, like houses, needed strong foundations, or they collapsed under pressure. On the anniversary of my husband's death, I visited the place where we used to walk together. I thanked him silently for his love and his foresight. Losing him had been devastating, but losing myself would have been worse. As I walked back to my car, I felt lighter, not because the pain was gone, but because it no longer defined me. I had grieved. I had packed my bags. I had left. And in doing so, I had finally come home to myself.